Hello dear students, myself Sachin Arjun Gurule, Assistant Professor from KTHM College Nasik. In the previous lecture, we are learning the chapter belongs to the entomology first, that is introduction to the entomology, and we have completed the phylogeny of the insect. Now, in this lecture, we are going to discuss the phylogeny of arthropods to understand the position of an insect in the phylum Arthropoda. So, before start with the phylogeny, let's see the generalized characteristic feature of phylum Arthropoda. The arthropods have an annulate body and segmental appendages is as a prime feature for all the arthropods. And the distinctive features are the joining of appendages and grouping of the body segment, each appendage being composed of number of limb segment known as a podite, and these podites individually movable by the muscles, while the body segments are segregated to form more or less a distinct trunk section, and these trunk sections are sometimes are referred as the stigmata. The integument is usually hardened by a deposition of sclerotizing substance in a definite areas of the cuticula, forming the exoskeletal plates. These exoskeletal plates are referred as the sclerites, to which most of the muscles are attached. The intervening membranous areas allow the movement between the plates, and this character has given the arthropod an unlimited field for development and the evolution of the exoskeletal mechanism, both in trunk as and in the appendages. The composition and specialization of the trunk section, which is also referred as a stigmata, are characteristic of each several major groups of the arthropoda. The most constant and distinctive stigma is the head. In its simplest form, a definitive head represents an embryonic procephalon consisting a large preoral cavity or preoral region, and usually the first postoral somite. Generally, however, includes the gnathal region. This gnathal region is known as a gnathocephalon, formed of at least three succeeding somites. The body region following the head may preserve uniform segmentation and simple structure, or it may be variously differentiated into the thorax and abdomen into the different classes of the arthropods. In some forms, the cephalic region and a varying number of the succeeding somites are combined in the cephalothorax, or it is also referred as the prosoma, distinct from that of the abdomen. The primitive terminal segment, which is known as a telson, is probably a not true somite, but is a end piece of the body bearing an anus corresponding to the periprocte of the annelid organism. So these appendages of the trunk includes a pair of procephalic antennae, or it is also referred as antennules among the crustacean, a double series of the segmented post-oral ventrolaterally lateral limbs, potentially a pair of each segment but the last. The post-oral appendage becomes variously modified in adaptation to the functional specialization. A typical arthropodal limb consists of the basis, which is known as a coxopodite, movable anterior-posteriorly on the body, and the six segmented shaft, which is referred as a telopodite, which is movable into the vertical plane on the basis. The definitive elementary canal includes a long anterior and the posterior section, which is referred as a stomodium, and the proctodium, which is derived from the ectoderm. The typical segmental nephridia are absent, as like in annelids the nephridia are present, but among the arthropods these nephridia are absent. Then blood vascular system is variously developed, but its plan in conforms with that of the annelids. The respiration is take place either through the body surface, general body surface, or the gills when it is aquatic. It is carried out with the help of the trachea and the book lungs when this arthropod organism they are inhabiting into the terrestrial environment. Then the nervous system of Arthropoda has some general character features of that of the annelids. Means nervous system is like that of the annelidan organism, and the primitive brain is consist of the pre-oral body of the nerve tissue lying above the stomodium, which is differentiated into the protocerebral, which is also referred as ocular, and the second one is a deutocerebral, which is referred as the antenular region, except in some forms where there is antennae is lacking. A definitive brain in most groups, however, is a syncerebrum, since it includes also a first pair of ganglion of the ventral nerve cord, which is secondarily becomes a tritocerebral brain lobes. Then the visual organs of the arthropoda includes the dorsal, which is also referred as the median ocellus, and the lateral eyes, which are innervated by the protocerebrum. The dorsal eye are always a simple ocelli, which is located usually on the upper or the anterior surface of the head. But in case of the Gyposura and possibly in the trilobites and the Eurypterids, there is a pair of rudimentary ventral eye is also present on a deflected under surfaces of the head just before the mouth. The number of dorsal eyes varies from 1 to 8, but often none of them is present. Primitively, there were there were perhaps the two pair or a single median dorsal ocellus probably represent the ocellus of the one pair which is united. Then lateral eyes are typically a compound in nature and being formed of a group of simple optical units composing a single organ, but often they are represented by group of the distinct ocelli. So these are the different characteristic features of the phylum Arthropoda. Now this is the phylogenetic tree of the Arthropoda. These arthropods include the three major groups, that is Trilobita, this Trilobita, then second one is the Chelicerata and the Mandibulata. As this phylogenetic tree, here you can see at the base the Trilobites is there. Then second group is Chelicerata. The Chelicerata, they are characterized by position of the chelocerili as a feeding organ, and among the Mandibulata, the presence of the mandible is a characteristic feature which is going to form that mandibulata, which includes the myriapods and the most modern arthropods, which includes the class insecta and the crustacea. So let's see one by one. First of all, the trilobiata. The trilobiates are the extinct creature from the Paleozoic era, which are flourished in the Paleozoic era, but they were most abundant during the Cambrian period, Cambrian and Ordovician period. So they are the most generalized known arthropods. They are most generalized arthropod. The body is usually oval and flattened and carries a ventral double series of the jointed limbs. The trunk is divided into the head and two body region known as the thorax and the pygidium. But the name trilobite is derived from the apparent triple division of the trunk lengthwise into an elevated median area. This median area is referred as the axis or the rachis. So this is a rachis. So this whole region is due to the having this elevated portion known as the axis or rachis, and It is covered by a two depressed lateral areas. So longitudinally it is completely divisible into the three regions. Hence they got a name, that is the Trilobita. The head, which appears to include the prostomium and the foresomite, is covered by a dorsal carapace. The thorax consists of the variable number of the free segment, and the pygidium contains a several segment which, except in a certain earlier forms, are united to form a caudal shield. So in some cases the caudal shield is present, which is going to give a protection to the caudal end. So each body segment except the last bears a ventrally a pair of jointed appendages on the upper surface of the head. In most species are a pair of compound lateral eyes, and in some forms the median tubercles are also there, which appears to be the simple dorsal eye. On the undersurface is a pair of small spot, which some writers believe to be the as a ventral eye. Means they also contains a compound eyes, then median tubercle as a simple single dorsal eye, and according to the some worker, they also known to have the ventral eyes. A distinctively generalized feature of the trilobites as compared with the other arthropod is lack of cephalization and the structural differentiation in the segmental appendages. Means there is no specialization for the segmental appendages which are found in their body. The first pair of appendage, which probably are the procephalic antennules, are filamentous, multi-articulate one. And the rest are without doubt the post-oral limbs. So they are practically all alike, except that some of the more anterior ones may have the greater number of segments than that of the other. The trilobate limbs preserves the typical forms and fundamental structure of all the arthropod appendages. The basis supports a large exit, that is epipodite, bearing a series of thin closely set plates or the filaments which probably functions as a gills. Then telopodite is usually having a six segments. The trilobites appears to be related on one hand to the Gyposura and on the other hand the phylopod crustaceans. Since they have the features characteristic of both these groups, so they are have shares the characters of both groups, that is Gyposura and the phylopod crustaceans. They are not literally the ancestor of other arthropods. However, since along with a trilobate there lived a highly specialized Eurypterids and a large and the varied crustacean fauna, but the trilobates are probably more closely related to the ancestor of arthropod than any other forms which are known to science, and hence the trilobate is only considered as the ancestor of the arthropods. So this is about the Trilobita. Then next group is a Chelicerata. Both the chelocerate and the mandibulate arthropods, the segmental appendages are diversified in forms and their function. Some of them are also suppressed. The most general distinctive feature that separates the Chelicerata from that of the Mandibulata is the suppression of antennules. So antennules are absent among the Chelicerata, which are well evident into the Mandibulata. And the second one, the modification of the first post-oral appendage to form a pair of Cheliceralae. This Cheliceralae is a pincer-like feeding organ, which is again another characteristic feature of the Chelicerata, which separate them from that of the Mandibulata. And the body segments are grouped into the prosoma and the abdomen. That is, there is only two trunks regions, prosoma and the abdomen. The first includes the protocephalon and the first six post-oral somite. which are always more or less united. The abdomen varies in a length and may be distinctively segmented, though in higher forms it is usually short and its segmentation is indistinct or moreover sometimes it is suppressed. The prosoma, it bears a six pair of limbs including the chelocerali. Of all which except the Chelicerata are generally the leg-like in forms. Only Chelicerata they are concerned with the food and feeding mechanism. Then the telopodite of the sum of the appendages often contains a 7 segments instead of 6 by the interpolation of the patella between the femur and the tibia. So generally the other arthropods are provided with a 5 sorry 6 smaller segments into their legs, but these are having the 7 segment. The abdominal appendages are usually absent, but in more generalized forms, they are retained in the modified shape and may have gill-bearing epipodite as in the Trilobita. The brain of Chelicerata is again the syncerebrum, which composed of the primitive cerebrum and the ganglion of the chirocerebral segment, but owing to the loss of procephalic antennae, the deuterocerebral centers are also suppressed, and the brain consists of the protocerebrum, which innervates the eyes, and the tritocerebrum, which innervates the chelocerali. The ocular organs includes the median dorsal eye, lateral eyes, and in some cases the ventral eyes are also present. The lateral eyes are compound one in more primitive forms. In other, they are represented by group of the 6 eyes. Now this whole Chelicerata, it includes the Eurypterida, Gyposura, Pycnogonida, and the modern organism belongs to the arthropod, that is Arachnida. So let's see one by one. First of all, the Eurypterida. The Eurypterids are extinct Paleozoic arthropods that are lived from the Cambrian to the Carboniferous period, but they have attained their greatest development into the Silurian and the Devonian period only. They were aquatic, mostly the freshwater or the mud inhabiting creature, while the majority are relatively smaller in size, less than a foot in a length. Some becomes a largest of all known arthropod, reaching the length of about 6 to 7 feet also. The segments of the prosoma are united. The abdomen is only consist of the 12 free segment and the last bearing a telson, which is usually a long tapering spine, but it is a plate-like in some forms. The Chelocerali are a long or short. The next 4 pair of the limbs are generally small and 6th pair is longest one and the flat evidently swimming organ, but in some species the legs are all long and slender. So here in this diagram you can see the 6th pair of the leg is becomes a long and somewhat flat rather than the first 4 limbs which are comparatively smaller in size. On the upper surface of cephalic region are a pair of compound eyes, lateral eyes, and 2 smaller simple dorsal eyes on the upper surface. According to the Stromer, there appears to be some forms of pair ventral eyes also. So this is about the Eurypterida. The next one is the Gyposura. The modern members of this group, commonly known as the horseshoe crab, or they are also referred as the king crab, have so many points of resemblance with that of the ancient Eurypterids that are two groups are often classed together as a merostomata. and the certain extinct forms makes a connection even closer. The body of horseshoe crab is distinctly divided into the prosoma and abdomen. So this one is a prosoma and next one is the abdomen. In each part of the segments are united and covered by a large dorsal carapace. So this one is a large dorsal carapace which confers the protection for the body parts. The six thoracic appendages are ciliate in case of female. So generally, in case of the crustaceans, only first limb is having the chela, but in case of female of this Gyposura, all the legs are provided with a chela. Here you can see the all the legs they are ciliate, but this condition only appears among the females and not in the males. The abdomen contains only six segments which bears a plate-like appendage very similar to those of the anterior part of the abdomen of the Eurypterids. Each except first having a large gill bearing epipodite. On the head, the pair of compound eyes compound lateral eyes, a pair of simple median dorsal eye, and a pair of rudimentary median ventral eyes is also found among the organism belongs to the Gyposura. The next one is a Cynogonida, or it is also referred as a Pentapoda. The cynogonids are aberrant arthropods, commonly known as sea spiders, as the body of this organism is somewhat resembles with that of the spider, and they are living into the seas, or they are found into the sea. Hence, they are referred as the sea spider. From the nature and their appendages, they appear to be belongs to the Chelicerata. And the modern member of the Chelicerata are the arachnids. So here includes the scorpion, then solpugids and phalangids, the spiders, tick and mites. So all these are the modern organisms which are put into the in the class Arachnida, which is belongs to the Chelicerata. In most of the forms, the trunk is divisible into the typical chelocerate manner into the prosoma and the abdomen. But in case of the solpugids, the prosoma is constricted between the fourth and fifth pair of limbs. The abdomen may be long and distinctly segmented, in which the distal part is narrowed and has the form of the jointed tail. But in case of spider and mites, the abdomen is very short and rotund with a indistinct and suppressed segmentation. So segmentation is generally very indistinct or either suppressed in case of the spiders. The prosomal appendages includes the chelocerali, a pair of pedipalp, and four pairs of the walking legs. The abdominal appendages are either absent or represented by modified rudimentary structures. The cephalic region of the prosoma generally bears a group of simple dorsal eye in some forms. On the other side, the five simple lateral eyes and but they are never compound. Paleontologically, the oldest known arachnids are the contemporaneous with the trilobites and the Eurypterids. So this is about the whole Cheliceratan group. The next one is a Mandibulata. Now this mandibulate arthropod differs from that of the Cheliceratan group, being in a two characteristic feature. The first one, retention of procephalic antennules. So this is a very important characteristic feature. So in all the mandibulata, that is myriapods as well as crustacea and insect, they has the antennules. The antennules are retained. And the second character, the modification of the second post-oral appendage to form a pair of biting or jaw-like feeding organ, and this jaw-like feeding organ is known as the mandible. The presence of mandible and presence of antennule, these are the most important characteristic features of the group known as the mandibulata. The appendage of the first post-oral segment corresponding to the chelocerali of the Chelicerata are present in most of the crustacea as a pair of biramous antennae. Then tegmosis is variable among the mandibulata. For example, in case of the insecta, the and the tegmosis is head, thorax, and abdomen. Among the crustacea, it is divisible into the cephalothorax and abdomen, while in case of the myriapoda, it is head and the trunk. So tegmosis is variable among the different group of the mandibulata. Head may consist of the procephalon only, but generally it contains a gnathocephalic section composed of mandibular and two maxillary somites, which is again the constant feature among the group belongs to the mandibulata. The myriapod and hexapod have a distinct head including four post-oral somites, that is the intercalary, mandibular, maxillary, and the labial. And the myriapod trunk not shows a tegmosis, but in a hexapod it is differentiated as the thorax and abdomen. But the head is a very constant tegma for all the mandibulate organisms. So this mandibulata, and they are characterized by having a mandibles and having a retention of the antennae. And we have already discussed about the great details into the myriapods when, and we have discussed the characteristic feature of the myriapods, and from that we have concluded that the myriapods, particularly the symphyla, they are the most common ancestors of the insect. And from the myriapods only the insects are get formed, and both these myriapods and the insecta, they are belongs to the common stem known as the mandibulata. So this is about the phylogenetic relationship of a different organism for that arthropoda. Thank you very much.